The story of Noah's flood has been one of the most debated and studied events throughout history. Beyond being a subject of debate, the flood raises profound questions about our planet's past. How was such a colossal flood possible? Where did the waters that covered the earth come from, and where did they go afterward? In this video, we will use the biblical account of the flood as a starting point for an exploration of its possible impact on our planet's historical and geological processes. We will examine how this narrative has influenced humanity's conception of the Earth and its inhabitants over time. We will explore the possible origins of the floodwaters, the changes this cataclysm may have left on Earth, and its lasting impact on the history of humanity. How did this event affect ancient civilizations and the world we know today? A catastrophe that, according to the Bible, changed the course of history forever. In this video, we will explore what happened in the antediluvian era, based on the book of Genesis and the second epistle of the Apostle Peter. Join us on this fascinating investigation as we try to answer these questions and unravel one of history's greatest mysteries. Chapter 1. The Antediluvian Era. In the pre-Diluvian era, a flourishing civilization existed that developed astonishing technological solutions for the time. Some believe that a form of pictographic writing already existed during that period, even before the development of cuneiform writing and the hieroglyphic system. It is theorized that this pictographic system was the precursor to the alphabetic writing system, potentially the first phonetic alphabet. So why destroy such a civilization? Because of the terrible social degradation in which that society was immersed. What little we know of that sad historical period describes a situation of extreme violence. The biblical narrative identifies the cause of so much evil when, in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, it states, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went in to the daughters of humans and had children by them." These were the heroes of old, men of renown. Who were the sons of God mentioned here? Although there are different interpretations, it is believed that the Nephilim were the result of the union between the sons of God, evidently angelic creatures, and the daughters of humans. This description corresponds with the most widely accepted conclusion that they were perverted angels who took human wives, giving rise to a race of powerful and corrupt beings who contributed even more to the degeneration of humanity. Evidently, the Apostle Peter referred to this episode when he wrote in his second epistle, chapter 2, verses 4 and 5, where it reads, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. If he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others." The union of divine creatures with human women described in the book of Genesis establishes a striking parallel with the mythological stories of different peoples of antiquity, suggesting that such a significant event must have left traces in the collective memory of humanity. In Greek mythology, demigods are the result of the union between gods and mortals, such as Hercules, the son of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, Theseus, son of Poseidon, who killed the Minotaur, or Perseus, son of Zeus, who decapitated Medusa. These demigods were also considered heroes, endowed with extraordinary abilities, and played crucial roles in the legends of antiquity. Like the Nephilim, the Greek demigods were a mixture of the divine and the human, and were attributed to great and sometimes destructive feats. However, while in Greek mythology these beings were revered and admired as heroes, in the biblical narrative, the Nephilim represent the corruption and decadence that enveloped the earth, contributing to God's decision to send the flood as an act of justice. This contrast reflects how different cultures interpret the idea of beings that transcend humanity. In the Bible, the Nephilim are considered part of the problem that led to divine judgment, while in Greek mythology, the demigods are glorified as central figures of the cultural narrative. Chapter 2. A Hope for salvation: Noah and the ark. Amidst all that corruption, God found a righteous man, Noah. God instructed Noah with the measurements, materials, and other details to build an ark and prepare for a flood that would destroy all flesh under heaven. But how was the ark made? The ark was 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, which is approximately 134 meters long, 22 meters wide, and 13 meters high. Its design included a lower, middle, and upper deck. It was rectangular with a flat bottom, lacking a bow or keel, its sole purpose being to float. The ark was longer than a football stadium, taller than a 3-story building. A vessel of these dimensions can have a cargo capacity of 40,000 cubic meters. These measurements surprisingly correspond to the length-to-width ratio used in the design of modern vessels. Some examples of length-to-width ratios are cargo ships. They usually have lower length-to-width ratios, around 5:1 or even less, to maximize cargo capacity and stability. High-speed vessels. These vessels typically have higher length-to-width ratios, even exceeding 10:1, to reduce drag and increase speed. Luxury vessels. Proportions can vary greatly depending on the design and intended use, but they are usually in a range intermediate between cargo ships and high-speed vessels. In conclusion, while a ratio of 6:1, like that of the ark, may be suitable for certain types of vessels and under certain conditions, the optimal proportions must be determined through a detailed analysis of the vessel's requirements and operating conditions. Evidently, if the ark saved Noah and his family by surviving the floodwaters, the 6:1 ratio proved to be correct. What materials were used to build the ark? To build the ark, wood from gopher trees had to be used, a Hebrew term for an uncertain tree. It could be cypress, pine, or cedar, a type of resistant and resinous wood. Noah had also been instructed to waterproof the ark inside and out with pitch. Constructing this enormous vessel was no easy task. According to tradition, Noah and his family took more than 50 years to build it. During this time, Noah demonstrated exceptional qualities of faith, obedience, and patience. Despite the incredulity and mockery of his generation, who did not understand the reason for building such a large vessel far from navigable waters, Noah obeyed and carried out his mission. In addition to building the ark, God gave Noah a crucial task. He had to bring with him a pair of every animal species, male and female, so that they could survive the flood and repopulate the earth afterward. For clean animals, those considered ceremonial and suitable for sacrifice, Noah was to bring 7 pairs of each kind. Curiously, the biblical account specifies that God caused the animals to approach the ark before the floodwaters began to fall. Noah and his family were saved because they were righteous in God's eyes. In a wicked world, they stood out for their obedience and trust in the divine warning. Chapter 3. The Beginning of the End. Noah, his family, and a pair of every animal species entered the ark. And then it began to rain. The biblical narrative, without sparing details, provides a specific timeline for this momentous event. When Noah was 600 years old, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. And rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, with their wives and Noah's sons' wives, entered the ark, they and every animal, every creature that moves on the earth according to its kind, all the birds of every kind, and every insect that flies. The biblical writer, using the poetic force of the Hebrew language, describes the flood in vivid imagery. On that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. While this may seem poetic, it aligns with the broader biblical context. According to biblical chronology, this date corresponds to the last days of October or the first days of November, around 4,395 years ago. Interestingly, this time period coincides with modern-day celebrations associated with death, like Halloween and the Day of the Dead. The writer J. Garnier suggests in his book, The Cult of the Dead, that these death-related celebrations might trace their origins back to the ancient destruction of the flood, which wiped out humanity and the offspring of fallen angels. Various cultures around the world have festivals dedicated to the dead, and all of them are celebrated on the same date that, according to the account of Moses, the flood took place, that is, on the 17th day of the second month, the month that practically corresponds to our November or a nearby date. The belief in a universal flood of limited scope has been defended by some who base their arguments on personal experiences and subjective opinions. However, the construction of scientific knowledge is based on systematic observation, experimentation, and the testing of hypotheses against reality. The biblical account treats the matter directly and without mincing words, presenting a story that, due to its surprising and forceful nature, has captivated generations. In fact, it states, "The waters rose so high that they covered all the high mountains under the entire heavens, 15 cubits above them." Considering that each biblical cubit would correspond to 44.5 centimeters, 15 cubits would be equivalent to almost 7 meters. The entire earth was submerged, and all life that lived outside the ark perished. The world population, which had become so corrupt, was swept away by the waters of the flood. Chapter 4. The Mystery of the Floodwaters. One might ask, where did such a quantity of water come from, and where did it end up? Analyzing the biblical account of the flood, we find some plausible answers to these questions. Let us examine once more what the biblical account refers to at the moment when the waters of the flood began to fall. On that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. This last statement reminds us of the description found in the first chapter of Genesis, verse 7, where we read, "And God made the expanse and separated the waters below the expanse from the waters above it. And it was so." Long before the days of Noah, while the earth was being prepared to receive the first forms of life, God, using the same universal laws that allow him to transform celestial bodies, made a separation between the waters that were evidently on the surface of our planet. With this separation, some of the waters remained on the surface of the planet, but large amounts of water in gaseous form were probably positioned in the troposphere, the layer of the atmosphere closest to the Earth. The image that is presented to us is that of our planet completely covered by a dense canopy of clouds, which, by retaining the temperature on the surface, would have created a natural greenhouse effect. Many conjectures have been made to understand what could have retained that canopy for an indefinite amount of time over the Earth and caused the precipitation of such a huge amount of water at the time of the flood, but the only certain fact we have is the biblical account, which makes it clear that all this happened through divine intervention. Could it be possible that the highest mountains were covered by almost 7 meters of water? Today, the highest mountains exceed 8 kilometers in height. The Earth has undergone radical transformations throughout its history. In the distant past, the continents were more extensive and the mountains were lower. Geological evidence, such as ancient submarine river networks, supports this idea. In fact, it has been calculated that if the surface of the planet were leveled, the mountains crushed, and the ocean depths filled, the amount of water in the oceans could cover the entire planet. Therefore, in general terms, the Earth is already a planet flooded by water. In fact, it is predominantly an aquatic planet, rather than a terrestrial one. These past geological conditions could explain how the biblical flood occurred, where the waters covered all the high mountains, for the simple reason that before the flood, the mountains did not rise to such a height. In addition, the Great Flood could have been the catalyst for drastic changes, including a significant reduction in human life expectancy. The biblical texts inform us that before the flood, people had a longer life expectancy than what we experience today. Moses, born several centuries after the flood, when he died, he reached the venerable age of 120 years. In his time, it was common to reach the age of a century, but gradually the life expectancy was settling around 70 or 80 years. When he wrote the book of Genesis in the 15th century BC, he was around 80 years old. The historical facts contained in the book of Genesis refer to the dawn of humanity, information that he could have collected by taking as a source ancient writings jealously guarded by Hebrew families and that were probably transmitted from generation to generation. Collecting these shocking events, he would undoubtedly have been surprised, as we are today, noting the life expectancy that people had before the flood. For example, the biblical account states that Adam died at the age of 930 years. This is not an isolated case, because other characters also reached an unthinkable longevity for our days, such as Enosh, who lived to be 905 years old, Jared, moreover, 962 years, and Methuselah, who is said to have lived 969 years, the oldest in the history of humanity. It seems that this fact was somewhat popular among the peoples of antiquity that developed after the flood. Sumerian mythology tells us about the list of antediluvian Sumerian kings, a combination of myths and legends. In these lists, we find the sequence of the governance of 8 kings in which each of them reigns for thousands of years. Could the catastrophe of Noah's days explain this drastic change in the duration of life? Some theorists suggest that this ancient canopy of water that protected the Earth from cosmic radiation and its disappearance after the flood could have exposed living beings to higher levels of radiation, affecting their DNA. However, in the absence of conclusive empirical evidence and the difficulties inherent in researching such ancient geological events, it is complex to establish a definitive corroboration of this hypothesis. Furthermore, any significant change in cosmic radiation would have altered the production of carbon-14, which would call into question the accuracy of radiocarbon dating for pre-Diluvian objects. If you want to know more about the carbon-14 dating method, we invite you to visit our YouTube channel, Mankind Roots, to watch the video, Carbon-14 Dating, How It Works. When the springs of the great deep burst open and the windows of the heavens were opened, billions of tons of water flooded the Earth. This event triggered enormous changes on the surface of the planet. The Earth's crust is relatively thin and varies in thickness, extending over a soft mass thousands of kilometers in diameter. Therefore, it is likely that under the weight of the fallen water, significant changes occurred in the Earth's crust. Over time, new mountains were formed. Existing mountains were raised to new heights. Shallow marine basins were deepened. Others were raised to considerable heights by compensation, dragging with them marine sediments accumulated for centuries, rich in fossil remains of animals that lived millennia ago. This activity would explain the findings of marine fauna fossils present in high mountains. In 2017, the team from the Natural History Museum of Denmark, led by David A.T. Harper, verified that Mount Everest was formed in the distant past, at the bottom of an ancient ocean, which is why a wide variety of fossils are found that lived at that time, such as the trilobites seen in the photograph. The Danish researchers traveled to Tibet and climbed to over 4,000 meters to reach a formation known as Komalangma. There, they found a large number of marine animal fossils, such as brachiopods, cephalopods, conodonts, and remains of immobile echinoderms, which allowed experts to learn more about these specimens from the Ordovician period. These findings are not unique. Fossils have also been found in the Alps, a place that has provided fossils of marine reptiles and other organisms that lived in an ancient sea. So, where did all the water that flooded the Earth end up? The answer is so obvious that it comes down to recognizing the conformation of the current terrestrial relief. It is still here, Around 70% of the planet's surface is covered by water. The remaining 30% corresponds to the emerged land that was elevated under the weight of the large amount of water that fell in the Great Flood. Chapter 5. Paleontological discoveries that support the account of the flood. An enigma that has captivated humanity for centuries has taken on a new dimension with the disconcerting discovery of remains of mammoths and rhinoceroses in the depths of the earth. These prehistoric giants, frozen in time and encased in the Arctic ice, offer us a window into a catastrophic past. Some of these colossal creatures were found with their last meals still undigested, a macabre testimony to a sudden and violent death. The abundance of mammoth tusks recovered suggests a mass extinction that shook the foundations of the ancient world. The fossil record reveals an even grimmer picture. Lions, tigers, bears, and moose, all lying together in the same geological layers, pointing to a simultaneous and global destruction. What catastrophic event could have wiped out these creatures in an instant? For many, the answer lies in the accounts of the Great Flood. Paleobotanical and isotopic studies provide evidence of a warmer Arctic, with forests and fauna adapted to temperate climates, as detailed in Deep Time Paleoclimatology and the Greenhouse Earth by James C. Zachus. Fossils of tropical plants and animals have been found in Arctic regions, indicating that at some point these areas had a much warmer and wetter climate. Geological studies have identified ancient coral reefs and coal deposits in the Arctic, confirming the existence of tropical or subtropical climatic conditions in the past. Some propose that before the flood, when the planet was supposedly enveloped by a canopy of water, a natural greenhouse effect was in force, maintaining a temperate climate worldwide, even at the poles. When the rains began, this pleasant climate dissipated so rapidly that it surprised local life forms, freezing them instantly. The enigmatic unknowns that these icy colossi hold continue to arouse deep interest in both the scientific and theological realms. The question arises, could these fossils constitute concrete evidence of the biblical account of Noah's flood, or should they be interpreted as simple vestiges of natural phenomena? The evidence presented corresponds with the narrative of the flood. However, contemporary science still lacks sufficient foundations to conclusively validate or refute all hypotheses. Nevertheless, such conjectures could be considered plausible under the parameters of rational and prudent reflection. Chapter 6. Beyond the Waters, the Dawn of a New Era. After 150 days, the waters began to recede, and in the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, located in what is now known as Turkey. Finally, the rain stopped and the waters receded. Noah and his family came out of the ark. The first thing Noah did was build an altar and offer sacrifices to God, giving thanks for his salvation. There, Noah and his family began to repopulate the earth, marking the beginning of a new civilization. According to the Bible, humanity spread across the earth from that moment on, fulfilling the divine mandate to be fruitful and multiply. According to the biblical account in Genesis chapter 9, on that same occasion, God established a covenant with Noah, a covenant that remains valid to this day and concerns us all. We find it in Genesis chapter 9, verses 8 to 17. It says, "Then God said to Noah and to his sons, 'Now I establish a covenant with you, with your descendants, and with all living creatures that came out of the ark with you, the birds, the animals, and all the living creatures on the earth that are with you, that is, with all living creatures on the earth. This is the covenant that I establish with you. Never again will I bring a flood to destroy all living creatures, nor to ruin the earth.' Then God added, 'This is the sign of the covenant that I establish with you and with every living creature that is with you for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it shall serve as a sign of the covenant which I make with the earth. Every time I bring clouds over the earth, the rainbow shall surely appear in the clouds.' Then surely I will remember the covenant which I have made with you and with every living creature. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh on the earth. When the rainbow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature that is on the earth. God repeated to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant which I establish with every living creature that is on the earth." Without a doubt, we have all experienced that special moment when between the clouds, the blue sky, and the green field, the magical rainbow appears. At that moment, we were not aware that we were experiencing a pleasant feeling of peace. The biblical account of the flood reminds us that this peace has historical roots, reminding us of the covenant that God made with Noah and, by extension, benefiting us all. Thinking about that event from long ago, we might wonder, was that the first rainbow? Had no one seen it before? The question of whether the first appearance of the rainbow coincided with the flood has been the subject of numerous debates. Some scholars argue that this phenomenon was known before the flood and that the divine act consisted of attributing a special meaning to a pre-existing natural event. The absence of references to the rainbow before the flood suggests that this optical phenomenon may have been unknown to humanity until then. As we have seen in a previous chapter, the pre-flood atmospheric conditions, according to the biblical account, were different and could have prevented the formation of a rainbow. This makes the appearance of the rainbow after the flood even more significant and particularly peculiar to be used as a symbol of such a special covenant of God. Chapter 7. Deep Roots, Collective Memory as a Bridge Between the Past and the Present. The story of the flood teaches us that the Creator is not indifferent to injustices and that He acts justly and compassionately. Although the world was destroyed, God allowed a new beginning in which, according to what happened, it has become clear that God's patience has a limit. Excessive perversion and violence will never be tolerated again. It is important to emphasize that this story, far from being considered a simple fable or myth, constitutes a report of great historical and cultural value. In fact, almost all ancient civilizations have stories that coincide remarkably with the biblical account of the flood. Did you know that there are more than 200 myths worldwide about a great flood? If a global flood never occurred, why are there so many stories about it? 95% describe a universal flood. In 88% of these accounts, a family is saved. In 70%, survival is achieved through a vessel. In 67%, animals are also rescued. In 66%, the flood is attributed to human wickedness. In 66%, the survivors receive a prior warning. In 57%, they find refuge on a mountain. In 35%, birds are released from the vessel. And in 9%, exactly 8 individuals are saved. For example, the Sumerians and Babylonians, two of the oldest civilizations, recount in the Epic of Gilgamesh a story of a great flood sent by the gods to destroy humanity, with a hero, Utnapishtim, who builds an ark to save his family and a pair of each animal species. Similarly, pre-Columbian civilizations, such as the Maya and the Aztecs, also have myths of massive floods that destroyed previous civilizations. The Aztecs tell the story of a universal flood in a story surprisingly similar to the biblical flood. Only 2 people, the hero Coxcox and his wife, survived the flood by floating in a vessel that rested on a mountain. Shortly after the flood, the giants built a great pyramid in an attempt to reach the clouds. It is said that this ambition angered the gods, who scattered the giants with fire sent from the heavens. The Toltecs spoke of a great flood. According to their legend, a massive flood destroyed the first world 1,716 years after its creation. Only a few people escaped this global flood in a Toplapet locali, a word meaning closed ark. After emerging from the closed ark, these few people wandered the earth and found a place where they built a zakuali, a tall tower, in case another flood came upon the earth. During the time of the zakuali, the languages of the Toltecs were confused, and they migrated to different parts of the earth. The Iban people of Sarawak, Malaysia, tell the story of a hero named Trau, who floated in an ark with his wife and numerous domestic animals. The natives of India tell the story of a man named Manu, who built an ark after being warned of a flood. Then, the waters receded, and the ark came to rest on a mountain. These stories, found in different cultures and separated by vast geographical distances, reflect a surprising pattern that seems to point to a collective memory of a catastrophic event in antiquity. This adds significant weight to the biblical account, suggesting that the flood is not only a theological narrative, but also a record of an event that left a deep mark on human history. The story of the disappearance of the first civilization, the story that reminds us that humanity had a new beginning with Noah's family, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their respective wives. All the nations of the earth originated from these 8 people. Is it possible to establish how the different national groups emerged from each of these couples? In the 10th chapter of Genesis, we find listed the 70 post-Diluvian families that descended from Noah's 3 sons and their wives. This historical record reveals the beginning of the great empires of antiquity and much more. In the coming videos, we will be going through each of the descendants and, guided by the biblical text, by documented history, and archaeological findings, we will discover our true roots, the roots of humanity. Don't miss the first in the series, Ancient Roots, Unveiling the Origin of Peoples. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of the antediluvian era, the flood, and its impact on our planet. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell to stay up to date on more content like this. See you next time.